Crocheting a gauge swatch is so important, especially when it comes to crocheting garments. But do you take that extra step and wash your crochet gauge swatch? Hi, my name is Michelle Ferguson, and I'm the crochet pattern designer of Two Brothers Blankets. And I'm on a mission to help crocheters crochet garments that make them fit and feel fantastic and also give them a great sense of pride. I want to get into why it's important to wash your gauge swatch. Now, most of the time, you just work up a swatch, a square or a rectangle, and you measure your stitches, and you go up a hook size or down a hook size if you need to change hook sizes to get the same number of stitches in the same measurement as the pattern calls for. But there's an added step when it comes to crocheting garments, and that is to wash your gauge swatch, and I'm going to share why. In my previous video, I demonstrated how I check gauge from start to finish, and in that video, you see me work up the swatch, you see me measure it, and then you see me block or wash it and measure it again. And then you see me put it in the dryer and measure it again, and I use all that information to determine what hook size I need to use for the garment that I was getting ready to make. But why did I do that? Well, you're going to wash your crochet garment, right? So if you're going to wash your garment, you want to wash your swatch because you want to know how that holds up and how washing it, the process of washing it, changes the number of stitches or doesn't change the number of stitches, or changes the look of the yarn, changes the look of the stitches, changes the feel of the yarn, all kinds of things. So let me give you some examples to help you see this visually and why. First, I'm going to link to a video that I posted a few weeks ago about choosing the right yarn for your crochet garment. And in that video, I shared the 3 C's of what I take into consideration when I am choosing a yarn. And one of those C's was, how easily can it be washed? So when you're choosing a yarn, you definitely want to look at the washing instructions that are on the label for the yarn. And you need to think about, do I want something that I can very easily throw into the washing machine, throw into the dryer, and not really have to worry about? Or am I okay with hand washing the garment and laying it flat to dry? Or one of each, machine washing it but laying it flat to dry? All the things that you need to consider. And when you have your gauge swatch and you take the time to wash it, you can figure all of that out also. So let's say you have a yarn that is machine washable and can be dried in the dryer. So you work up that gauge swatch and you're like, okay, great, I can machine wash it and throw it in the dryer. This is the kind of care I want to give to it. And you work up your gauge swatch, you fasten off, and you throw it in the washing machine. And you see that the stitches have expanded, and now instead of 16 stitches in 4 inches, you have 13 stitches in 4 inches. And you're like, okay, so that expanded. So that would be your blocked gauge. And so if you're measuring a blocked gauge, or if it says to block your gauge if you plan on blocking, that's what you need to go off of. So if you needed 15 stitches in 4 inches and you're getting 13 stitches in 4 inches, you need to go down a hook size of that block gauge, even if it was more than that before you blocked it or washed it. But say you throw it in the dryer and you put it on low for 20 minutes and you dry it, and it shrinks back to 16 stitches per 4 inches, right back to where you started. Then you would need to go up a hook size to try to get 15 stitches in 4 inches. So by knowing that, you know what hook size you need to use. You also know that if you were to wash it in the machine and take it out and lay it flat to dry, your stitches are going to be expanded. The actual whole of the garment is going to be bigger than what it was before you put it in the dryer. And if you lay it flat to dry, it's not going to shrink back up to the original size, which you may prefer. That's totally up to you. But by washing your gauge swatch, you know that now. On the other hand, if you're hand washing a garment and laying it flat to dry, if the stitches do expand, you have to take that into consideration every time, because you're not going to be putting it in the dryer and shrinking it back up or anything like that. You may also decide that you wash it in the machine, it holds up fine, you get your blocked gauge with it, you figure out your hook size with it blocked and if the stitches expand or not, and all is good. And then you throw it in the dryer and it makes it all fuzzy and pilly, and it just doesn't look very good after it's been in the dryer. From that, you can determine, okay, I can machine wash this. It's fine to machine wash. It held up good. I'm going off blocked gauge, so I'm using the hook size with the wet gauge, like with it blocked, but I'm not going to put it in the dryer. I'm going to lay it flat to dry because the dryer makes it look all pilly and yucky, and I don't like it. If you hadn't tested all this out with your swatch, you may have found out all this the hard way with your crochet garment if you threw it in the dryer and it was all fuzzy and ugly and messy afterwards, right? So by taking your gauge swatch and washing it or blocking it, how you plan to wash the garment and block the garment, you are able to not only determine your hook size and the measurements and the blocked measurements and all that, but also how it holds up. It really tests how it holds up with the washing process that you plan to put it through. So that is my recommendation. I find that it's very helpful. I find especially if you're making a garment that you do plan to wear and that you do plan to wash, and you want to wear the garment often and be able to love it for, many months and years to come, then it is best to take that extra step, that little added time. I know most people don't like to do the gauge because it's added time before you can start on the garment, but taking the gauge, making a gauge swatch, doing the washing and the blocking and the drying, however you're going to dry it and all that, and measuring throughout each step. I'll link to the other video where I show me doing it step by step. You can really see how that fabric is going to hold up through that process. And that way there's no questions and there's no oopsies and there's no, well, I didn't know this was going to happen, after you've already spent that time crocheting the garment, making it beautiful, making it fit. That's just the worst, when it blocks out and it's way too big, or it shrinks up, or it's fuzzy and pilly and ugly. And so I recommend taking that extra step. This is why it's important. Let me know if you have any questions about this or any thoughts. I would love to hear them. I hope you'll give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.